The alarm screamed through the ship like a wounded animal. Red lights flashed along the corridors of the Starlight Drifter, painting the metal walls in shades of blood and warning. "Captain!" Lavra Bennett stood from her chair on the bridge and stared at the display screen. A ship had dropped out of faster-than-light travel right in front of them. It was large and dark, covered in sharp angles and weapons. She recognized the design immediately. Valoran raiders. "They're hailing us," said Danny Cho, her first officer. He was a calm man with steady hands and a mind that worked faster than most computers. Nothing seemed to shake him, but even now his jaw was tight. "Put them through," Lavra said. The screen flickered and a face appeared. It was not a human face. The creature had a head like an insect, with large black eyes that reflected the light of its own bridge. Its mouth moved sideways when it spoke, and its voice came through the translator as cold and sharp. "Human vessel. I am Commander Krex of the Valoran Hunter Fleet. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resist, and you will die. Cooperate, and some of you may live." Lavra looked at Danny. Danny looked back at her. Neither of them showed fear. "Understood, Commander," Lavra said, keeping her voice flat. "We're a cargo ship. We're not looking for a fight." "Smart," Krex said. The screen went dark. Lavra let out a breath and turned to her crew. The bridge was small, holding only 4 stations. Danny sat at navigation. Maya Torres, their engineer, was at the systems console. And Chris Palmer, the youngest of them all, stood near the door. He was their medic, fresh from training, and this was only his 3rd run on a cargo ship. "Captain?" Chris asked. His voice was shaking. "What do we do?" Lavra walked toward him and put a hand on his shoulder. "We stay calm. We do what they say. And we wait." Chris frowned. "Wait for what?" Lavra didn't answer. She looked at Maya instead. Maya was a short woman with dark hair and grease stains on her hands. She knew this ship better than anyone alive. She had built half of it herself. "Maya," Lavra said quietly, "what's our current gravity setting?" Maya checked her console. 0.4 G, Captain. We lowered it last week to save fuel." Lavra nodded slowly. "Keep it there for now. But be ready." Maya's eyes narrowed, and then she understood. A small smile crossed her face. "Yes, Captain." The Valoran ship connected to the Starlight Drifter with a loud clang. The whole vessel shook as docking clamps locked into place. Lavra led her crew to the main cargo hold, where they stood in a line and waited. The door opened with a hiss of air. 12 Valoran soldiers marched inside. They moved on 4 legs, their bodies long and low to the ground. Their exoskeletons were a dark green color, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. At the front of the group was Commander Krex. He was taller than the others, and his eyes seemed to look everywhere at once. Krex stopped in front of Lavra and studied her. "You are the captain?" "I am," she said. "You are smaller than I expected," Krex said. "Your species is strange. Soft skin, weak bones. And yet you spread across the stars like a disease." Lavra said nothing. She kept her face calm and her hands at her sides. Krex walked past her and looked around the cargo hold. His soldiers spread out, checking every corner, every crate. One of them noticed the metal bands running along the floor in a grid pattern. He clicked something in his own language. Krex glanced at the bands but seemed uninterested. "What are those?" "Part of the ship's systems," Maya said quickly. "Environmental controls." Krex made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Humans and their machines. You build so much, and yet you are still weak." He turned back to Lavra. "Now, you will tell me what cargo you carry. You will tell me where your weapons are hidden. And you will do this quickly, or I will begin killing your crew." Lavra met his eyes. We carry medical supplies, food, spare parts. Nothing valuable to you. I will decide what is valuable, Krex said. He stepped closer to her, so close she could smell the strange chemical scent of his body. Do not lie to me, human. I have boarded many ships. I have killed many crews. Your kind always hides something. We're not hiding anything, Danny said from behind Laura. We're just trying to make a living. Krex turned his head toward Danny. You speak out of turn. That is dangerous. He waved one of his legs, and a soldier moved toward Danny with weapon raised. But before the soldier could reach him, Chris stepped forward. Please, Chris said. We don't want any trouble. Just take what you want and go. Krex looked at the young medic with what might have been curiosity. This one is afraid. Good. Fear is wise. He walked toward Chris slowly. Tell me, young human, do you know what my people call your world? Chris shook his head. We call it the Death World, Krex said. Your planet is heavy. Your air is thick. Your water falls from the sky and floods your land. Predators hunt in your forests. Fire burns your cities. And yet your species survived. Some of my people think this makes you dangerous. He made that laughing sound again. I think it just makes you lucky. He turned away from Chris and walked back to the center of the room. Search everything, he ordered his soldiers. If you find weapons, bring them to me. If any human moves without permission, shoot them. Laura watched the soldiers spread out through her ship. She watched them open crates and scan walls. She watched them move with confidence, believing they were in control. And then she looked at Maya. Maya was standing very still, her hand resting near her belt where a small console was clipped. Her fingers were not moving, but they were ready. Laura gave the smallest shake of her head. Not yet. They stood in silence as the Valorans searched. Minutes passed. The soldiers found nothing but what Laura had promised. Medical supplies, food, spare parts. Krex grew frustrated. He clicked his mouthparts together in annoyance and turned back to Laura. You are hiding something, he said. I can feel it. Humans always hide something. I've told you the truth, Laura said calmly. Krex moved fast. His leg swept out and struck Chris across the face, sending the young medic crashing to the floor. Blood ran from a cut on his cheek. The truth, Krex said, is what I decide it is. Laura's hands curled into fists. Danny stepped forward but stopped when 3 weapons pointed at his chest. Maya's fingers twitched toward her console. Laura looked at Krex. Her voice was cold when she spoke. You have one chance to leave this ship peacefully. Take whatever cargo you want. But do not touch my crew again. Krex stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, loud and harsh. Threats from a soft creature. How entertaining. He turned to his soldiers. Prepare to execute them one by one until someone tells me what I want to know. Laura looked at Maya and gave a single nod. Maya whispered, so quiet that only humans could hear. They didn't even ask about the gravity bands. Her fingers touched the console. Maya's fingers moved across the console with practiced speed. She had done this 1,000 times before, but never like this. Never with enemies in the room. Never with her captain's eyes burning with quiet fury. The gravity bands were her invention. Well, not completely her invention. Humans had been using gravity technology for over a century, but Maya had improved the design, made it faster, more precise. She had installed these bands herself, welding them to the floor plates during long nights when the rest of the crew was sleeping. Most alien species did not understand gravity the way humans did. They came from worlds where gravity was light, where their bodies had evolved to float and glide. The Valorans came from a moon called Desser, where gravity was only 0.3 of Earth's pull. Their exoskeletons were strong enough to protect them from predators, but they were not built to carry heavy weight. Humans were different. Earth was a heavy world. Every human alive had grown up with one full G of gravity pressing down on their bodies every single day. Their bones were dense. Their muscles were strong. Their hearts pumped blood upward against a constant pull that would kill most other species. When humans first went to space, they learned quickly that they could not survive at low gravity for long. Their bodies would weaken, their bones would thin, their hearts would forget how to work. So they built ships that could create gravity. Spinning sections at first, then gravity generators, and finally the bands. The bands were the best technology humanity had ever created for life in space. And right now, those bands were set to 0.4 G, comfortable for aliens. Easy on fuel, but not natural for humans. Laura watched Maya's hands and felt her heart begin to beat faster. She remembered the first time she had experienced full Earth gravity again after a long mission. She had been 22 years old, returning home after 8 months in space. When she stepped off the shuttle and felt the full weight of Earth pressing down on her, she had almost fallen to her knees. It had felt like the whole planet was trying to crush her, but she had grown used to it again within days. Because that was what humans did. They adapted. They survived. They carried the weight and kept walking. Krex was still talking. He was giving orders to his soldiers, telling them to line up the human crew, to prepare for executions. He was confident. He was in control. He had done this many times before. He did not notice the small display on the wall beginning to change. Maya pressed the final button and spoke in a calm, quiet voice, returning to Earth standard. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The cargo hold was silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Krex turned toward Maya with annoyance on his face. "What did you say?" he demanded. And then the gravity began to rise. It started slowly. The display on the wall climbed from 0.4 to 0.5. Such a small change. Most humans would not even notice it. But the Valorans felt it immediately. One soldier stumbled. His weapon suddenly felt heavier in his grip. He adjusted his stance, confused. 0.6. Another soldier dropped to one knee. He made a clicking sound of distress, his legs trembling under the new weight. Krex looked around at his soldiers with wide eyes. "What is happening? What are you doing?" Laura stepped toward him. Her movement was easy, natural. The gravity meant nothing to her. "I asked you to leave peacefully," she said. "I gave you a chance." 0.7. The soldiers were falling now. One by one, they collapsed to the floor. Their exoskeletons cracked under the pressure as their own bodies became too heavy to carry. They gasped for breath, their lungs struggling to expand against the crushing force. Krex tried to raise his weapon, but his arm would not obey him. The gun slipped from his grip and clattered to the floor. He fell forward onto his front legs. Then his back legs gave out, and he was flat against the metal deck. 0.8. Danny moved calmly through the fallen soldiers, picking up their weapons one by one. He worked without hurry, stepping over bodies that could not move to stop him. 0.9. Chris had gotten back to his feet. The blood still ran down his face, but he was standing without difficulty. He looked at the Valorans on the floor, and his expression was not one of anger or satisfaction. It was something closer to pity. 1.0. Earth standard. The gravity that every human lived with from the moment they were born until the moment they died. The weight that had shaped their bones, strengthened their hearts, and made them into the creatures they were. For the humans, it felt like coming home. For the Valorans, it felt like the end of the world. Krex lay on the floor, his body pressed flat against the metal. Every breath was a struggle. His exoskeleton was cracking in places, thin lines spreading across his back like broken glass. He could not move his legs. He could barely move his head. Lavra walked toward him and knelt down beside him. She picked up his weapon and examined it casually, turning it over in her hands. "This is a nice gun," she said. "Well made. Your people are good engineers." Krex made a sound that might have been a curse, but he did not have enough breath to form words. Lavra set the weapon aside and looked into his eyes. "You asked me what we were hiding. You were so sure we had some secret weapon, some trick that would explain how soft creatures like us could survive in this galaxy." She leaned closer. "This is our trick, Commander. This is our weapon. We live at a gravity that would crush your strongest warrior. We carry this weight every day of our lives, and we do not even notice it. We are not weak. We have never been weak. We are just quiet about our strength." Krex's eyes were wide with pain and something else. Fear, perhaps? Or understanding. "You are monsters," he managed to whisper. Lavra shook her head. "No, we are humans. And this is simply how we live." She stood up and looked at her crew. Danny had gathered all the weapons. Maya was monitoring the gravity levels, making sure they stayed stable. And Chris was already moving toward the fallen soldiers with his medical kit in hand. "Chris," Lavra said, "what are you doing?" The young medic looked up at her. "They're hurt, Captain. Some of them might die if we don't help them." Lavra studied his face. He had just been struck by one of these soldiers. He had blood on his cheek and fear in his heart. And yet, he was reaching for his medical supplies. "They came here to kill us," Danny said quietly. "I know," Chris said. "But they're hurt now. That's all that matters." Lavra was silent for a moment. Then she nodded. "Help them. Keep them alive." Chris moved among the fallen Valorans, checking their vital signs, adjusting their positions to help them breathe. He worked quickly and carefully, treating each soldier with the same attention he would give to any patient. Krex watched him with confusion in his eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Lavra walked back to the center of the room and looked at the display on the wall. 1.0 G Earth Standard. Home. "Maya," she said, "open a channel to the Valoran ship." Maya nodded and touched her console. A moment later, a new face appeared on the screen. This one was younger than Krex, with smaller eyes and a nervous twitch in its movements. "I am Second Commander Vis," the Valoran said. "What have you done to our soldiers? Our sensors show they are all down." "Are they dead?" Lavra shook her head. "They're alive. All of them. For now." Vis leaned forward. "What do you want?" Lavra smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I want to have a conversation about what happens next." Second Commander Vis stared at Lavra through the screen with eyes that could not hide his fear. Behind him, other Valorans moved back and forth, their voices clicking in rapid conversation. They were scared. Lavra could see it in the way they moved, in the way they kept glancing at the display showing their fallen soldiers. "What have you done to them?" Vis demanded. "What weapon did you use?" Lavra tilted her head. "No weapon. We simply returned our ship to normal conditions." "Normal?" Vis's voice rose higher. "They cannot move. They cannot breathe properly. Our medical scans show their exoskeletons are cracking under some kind of pressure. That pressure is called gravity," Lavra said calmly. 1G Earth Standard. The same gravity that every human grows up with from birth. Vis was silent for a moment. His mouth parts moved, but no sound came out. Finally, he spoke again, his voice quieter now. "That is not possible. No species can survive at such gravity. It would crush them. And yet here we are," Lavra said. "Standing, walking, breathing, while your strongest soldiers lie on our floor, unable to lift their own heads." She let that sink in before continuing. "Your commander made a mistake today. Second Commander. He thought we were weak because our skin is soft and our bones break. He did not understand that everything about us was shaped by a world that would kill his kind in minutes. We do not look strong because we do not need to. Our strength is invisible. It is inside us. It is in every muscle, every bone, every heartbeat. On the floor behind her, Chris continued to work on the fallen Valorans. He had propped up several of them to help them breathe better. He was giving oxygen to one who was struggling the most. The soldier's eyes followed Chris's movements with confusion and something that looked like gratitude. Vis watched this through the ship's internal cameras, which Lavra had made sure to activate. "Your medic is helping them," he said slowly. "Why?" "Because they need help," Lavra said simply. "But they came to kill you." "Yes, and now they are hurt." "Those are two different things." Vis did not seem to understand. His head tilted to one side, a gesture that Lara had learned meant confusion among his species. "This makes no sense. In war, you destroy your enemies. You do not heal them." Lavra walked closer to the screen. "We are not at war, Second Commander. Your people attacked our ship. We defended ourselves. But we did not start this, and we have no desire to continue it. We are cargo haulers. We carry medicine and food to colonies that need them. We are not warriors. Then how did you defeat 12 of our best soldiers without firing a single shot?" "By existing," Lavra said. "By being what we are. Nothing more." Vis fell silent again. The Valorans behind him had stopped moving. They were all watching the screen now, watching the human woman, who spoke so calmly about crushing their soldiers with the simple weight of her world. Danny walked up beside Lavra and spoke quietly. "Captain, 3 of the soldiers are in serious condition. Chris says they need proper medical care within the next few hours, or they might not survive." Lavra nodded and turned back to the screen. "Second Commander, I am going to make you an offer. You can refuse it if you want, but I suggest you listen carefully." Vis straightened. "I am listening. You will detach your ship from ours and move to a safe distance. You will power down your weapons. Once I am satisfied that you are no longer a threat, I will lower our gravity back to a level your soldiers can survive. My crew will carry them to the airlock, and you will send a shuttle to retrieve them. All 12 will be returned to you alive." Vis blinked. "And in return?" "In return, you will leave. You will not follow us. You will not attack any human ship again. And you will tell your superiors what happened here today. Tell them that humans are not the soft creatures they believe us to be. Tell them that our world made us strong in ways they cannot imagine. Tell them that the next human ship they attack might not be as merciful as we are." The word hung in the air. Merciful. It was not a word that Valorans used often. Their culture was built on strength and dominance. The strong survived. The weak did not. Mercy was seen as foolishness, but Vis was looking at the screen showing his soldiers. He was watching Chris Palmer, the young human with blood still drying on his face, carefully tending to Commander Krex. He was watching a species he had been taught to see as prey, treating his people with kindness they had not earned. "Why?" Vis asked finally. "Why show us mercy? You could kill us all. You could crush every soldier on that ship and claim self-defense. No one would blame you. Why let us go?" Lavra considered the question. It was a fair one. She thought about all the ships Krex had boarded before this one, all the crews he had killed, all the cargo he had stolen. She thought about how easy it would be to simply leave the gravity at 1G and let the Valorans slowly die. But that was not who she was. That was not who humanity was. "Because killing you would not bring back the people you have hurt," she said. "Because your soldiers on my floor are not evil. They are just following orders from leaders who taught them that strength means cruelty. Because somewhere on your ship or back on your home world, there are families waiting for these soldiers to come home. And because I do not want to be the reason those families receive bad news. She paused and met Vis's eyes through the screen. But mostly because I can. Because I have the power to destroy you, and I am choosing not to. That is what real strength looks like, Second Commander. It is not about what you can do. It is about what you choose not to do. Vis was quiet for a long time. The other Valorans on his bridge were watching him, waiting for his decision. Finally, he lowered his head in what Laura recognized as a gesture of respect. "We accept your terms," he said. "We will detach and power down our weapons. And we will tell our superiors what happened here." Laura nodded. "Thank you. Give us 10 minutes to prepare your soldiers for transfer." The screen went dark. Danny let out a long breath. That was a gamble, Captain. What if he had refused? Then we would have found another way, Laura said. But I did not think he would refuse. He saw what we did to his soldiers without weapons, without violence. He knows that if we wanted them dead, they would already be dead. Sometimes the best way to win is to show your enemy that you could destroy them, but choose not to. She turned and walked back to where Chris was working. The young medic had done well. All 12 Valorans were stable now, their breathing easier, their bodies carefully positioned to reduce the strain of the gravity. Krex was conscious, though he could not move. His eyes followed Laura as she approached. "You could have killed us," he said. His voice was weak, barely a whisper. "Yes," Laura agreed. "Why did you not?" Laura knelt beside him, just as she had done before. But this time, her expression was not cold. It was almost gentle. "Because that is not who we are," she said. "Humans are many things, Commander. We can be cruel. We can be violent. We can be selfish and stupid and short-sighted. But we can also be kind. We can choose to help instead of hurt. We can look at an enemy and see a person instead of a target." She stood up. "We are going to carry you back to your ship now. It will hurt. The gravity will press down on you with every step. But my crew will be gentle, and your people will be waiting. When you recover, I hope you will remember this moment. Not as a defeat, but as a lesson." Krex closed his eyes. "What lesson?" Laura looked down at him. "That strength without mercy is just cruelty. And cruelty always loses in the end." She turned to her crew. "Let us get them home." The transfer took almost an hour. Maya lowered the gravity in sections, creating a path from the cargo hold to the airlock where the Valoran shuttle was waiting. Even at 0.6 G, the soldiers could barely move on their own. The human crew had to carry them. Danny took the lead, lifting one soldier over his shoulder like a sack of grain. The Valoran was larger than him, with an exoskeleton that should have been too heavy to lift. But Danny had grown up on Earth, had spent his childhood running through hills and climbing trees under the full weight of his home world. This was nothing. Maya helped where she could, guiding soldiers who could still walk a little, supporting those who could not. She was smaller than Danny, but her arms were strong from years of working with heavy machinery. Chris walked beside Commander Krex, monitoring his vital signs with a small device. The commander's exoskeleton had cracked in several places, and there was a risk of internal damage. Chris kept talking to him, explaining what was happening, what to expect, how to breathe to reduce the pain. "Why do you keep talking to me?" Krex asked at one point. His voice was still weak, but there was genuine confusion in it. "Because being hurt is scary," Chris said simply, "especially when you do not understand what is happening to your body. Talking helps. It reminds you that you are not alone." Krex was silent for a moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh, though it came out more like a cough. "You are a strange species. I have heard that before," Chris said. Laura stayed at the back, watching her crew work. She was proud of them. They had been attacked, threatened, and nearly killed. And now they were carrying their attackers to safety with care and patience. This was what humanity could be at its best. This was the part of her species that she loved most. When they reached the airlock, the Valoran shuttle was waiting. Its door opened, and medical teams rushed out to receive the soldiers. They moved quickly, but carefully, loading each Valoran onto stretchers and carrying them inside. This was there in person. He had left his bridge and come down to oversee the transfer himself. When he saw Commander Krex being carried out by Chris, he stepped forward. "Commander," he said, "are you functional?" Krex opened his eyes. "I will survive. Thanks to them." Vis looked at Chris, then at Lavra, who had come forward to stand beside her crew. "I do not understand your species," he said. "Everything I have been taught says you should have killed us. Everything in our culture says that mercy is weakness. And yet here you are, saving the lives of soldiers who came to end yours." Lavra shrugged. "Maybe your teachers were wrong." Vis considered this. Maybe they were. He hesitated, then spoke again. "I will keep my word, Captain. I will tell my superiors what happened here. But I must warn you. They may not believe me. They may send more ships, stronger soldiers, better weapons. Let them come," Lavra said. Her voice was calm, without any threat in it. "We will be here. We will always be here. And we will do exactly what we did today. We will defend ourselves, and then we will show mercy. Eventually, your people will understand that attacking us is not worth the cost. And if they do not understand?" Lavra smiled slightly. "Then we will keep teaching them. As many times as it takes." The last soldier was loaded onto the shuttle. The medical teams retreated inside, and Vis stood alone at the threshold of the airlock. He looked at the 4 humans standing before him. A captain, an officer, an engineer, and a medic. 4 soft creatures from a heavy world who had defeated his best soldiers without firing a single shot. "I will remember this day," Vis said quietly. "I will remember what you showed me." "That is all I ask," Laura said. Vis turned and walked into the shuttle. The door closed behind him, and the vessel detached from the starlight drifter with a soft clunk. Through the porthole, Lavra watched it drift back toward the raider ship. Danny came to stand beside her. "Do you think he meant it?" "I think he did," Lavra said. "Whether his superiors will listen is another question. And if they do not?" Lavra turned away from the porthole. "Then other humans will face other Valoran raiders. And those humans will do what we did. They will use their gravity, their strength, their ability to survive things that would kill other species. And eventually, the Valorans will learn." She walked back toward the bridge, her crew following behind her. "Maya, how are our systems?" "All good, Captain. No damage from the docking. We can resume our course whenever you are ready." "Do it. We have medicine to deliver." Maya nodded and moved to her station. Danny took his place at navigation, and Chris settled into a corner, finally taking a moment to clean the blood from his face. Lavra sat in her captain's chair and stared out at the stars. She thought about her grandfather, who had lived his whole life on Earth. He had told her stories about the old days before humans went to space. Stories about hurricanes that destroyed cities, earthquakes that swallowed towns, fires that burned for weeks. He had told her about the predators that once hunted humans, the diseases that killed millions, the wars that nearly ended everything. And yet humans had survived. They had built cities on fault lines and coastlines and volcanic plains. They had crossed oceans and deserts and frozen wastes. They had climbed mountains that should have been unclimbable and explored caves that should have been unexplorable. They had faced extinction 100 times and kept going. That was what it meant to be human. Not the soft skin or the breakable bones or the short lives. It was the refusal to give up. It was the ability to carry impossible weight and keep walking. It was the choice to help an enemy when it would be easier to let them die. "Captain?" Chris's voice broke into her thoughts. She turned to look at him. He had cleaned up his wound and put a small bandage on his cheek. He looked tired but not defeated. "Yes, Chris? Do you think Commander Krex will remember what we did?" Lavra considered the question. "I think he will. Whether he understands it is different from remembering it. Understanding takes time. Sometimes it takes a whole lifetime. But you gave him a chance. Yes, that is all we can ever do. Give people chances and hope they take them." Chris nodded slowly. "I have never thought about it that way before. I always thought medicine was about fixing bodies. But today it felt like something more." "It was something more," Lavra said. "You showed Krex that humans are not what he believed. You showed him that we can hurt and still be kind. That we can bleed and still help others. That is a powerful thing, Chris. More powerful than any weapon." The young medic was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "Thank you, Captain." Lavra nodded and turned back to the stars. The starlight drifter hummed around her, its gravity bands keeping the weight of Earth wrapped around her crew like a familiar blanket. Outside, the Valoran ship was growing smaller in the distance, carrying its wounded soldiers home. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know if the Valorans would learn from this day, or if they would return with anger and vengeance. But she knew that she had done the right thing, and sometimes that was enough. The stars waited ahead, bright and cold and full of mysteries. Laura watched them and let herself feel something she had almost forgotten during the long hours of the boarding. She hoped that Krex would heal. She hoped that Vis would tell the truth. She hoped that somewhere in the vast dark galaxy, there were other species looking at humans and seeing more than soft creatures from a heavy world. And she hoped that humanity would keep earning that respect. Not through war or conquest or cruelty, but through the simple, quiet strength of being exactly what they were human. 3 months had passed since the incident aboard the Starlight Drifter. In that time, the story had traveled far beyond the borders of Valoran space. It had spread through trade routes and communication networks, passed from ship to ship and station to station, growing larger with each telling. On the Galactic Council Station, the story finally reached official ears. The council chamber was vast, built to hold representatives from over 200 species. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top, and the floor was divided into sections with different gravity, atmosphere, and temperature to accommodate the diverse members. The Valoran representative stood in the center of the chamber, his voice amplified so that all could hear. He was an older member of his species, with a gray tint to his exoskeleton and scars that told of battles long past. "We formally request that human vessels be classified as environmental hazards," he announced. "They should be required to display warning markers and prohibited from entering standard trade lanes." A murmur ran through the chamber. The representative from the Telari Collective, a species of small, feathered beings who lived on gas giants, leaned forward with curiosity. "Environmental hazards? What threat do human cargo ships pose to the environment?" "Not the external environment," the Valoran said. "The internal one. Human vessels operate at gravity levels that are lethal to most species in this chamber. One of our raiding parties boarded a human ship 3 months ago. Within minutes, all 12 soldiers were incapacitated. Their exoskeletons cracked under the weight. They could not breathe. They could not move. And the humans simply stood there, watching, completely unaffected." The murmurs grew louder. Several representatives turned to look at the human section of the chamber, where Ambassador Kevin Grant sat with his small delegation. Grant was a tall man with gray hair and a calm expression that rarely changed. He had been a diplomat for over 30 years, and he had heard many strange accusations during that time. But this was new. He stood slowly, and the chamber fell quiet. "Representative," Grant said, his voice polite and measured. "Am I to understand that your complaint is that human ships maintain the natural gravity of our home world?" "You call it natural," the Valoran said. "We call it weaponized. It is simply how we live," Grant replied. "Earth's gravity is 1g. That is the environment our species evolved in. That is the weight we carry from the moment we are born until the moment we die. We did not choose it. We simply adapted to it." The Talari representative spoke again. "But surely you could lower your gravity when other species are aboard?" "We do," Grant said. "When we have alien guests, we lower our gravity to diplomatic levels." The ship in question was running at 0.4 g at the time of the boarding. It was only when the Valoran soldiers began threatening to execute the crew that the captain restored standard gravity. He paused and looked around the chamber. The crew of that ship did not fire a single shot. They did not use any weapons. They simply returned their home to its natural state and waited for the soldiers to collapse. And then, rather than letting those soldiers die, they provided medical care and returned them safely to their ship. Every single Valoran survived. The chamber was silent now. Grant continued. "You speak of humans as environmental hazards. But I would ask you to consider what the Valoran raiding party was doing on that ship in the first place. They were there to steal cargo and kill innocent people. And yet, when those same innocent people had the power to destroy their attackers, they chose mercy instead. They let the words hang in the air. That is who humans are. We are not soft, despite what some of you may believe. Our world made us strong in ways that most species cannot imagine. But we do not use that strength to conquer or destroy. We use it to survive, to protect, and when possible, to help. Even those who would harm us." The Valoran representative was silent. He had no response that far from the council chamber. On a space station at the edge of civilized space, the story had taken on a different shape. The bar was called The Last Light, and it served anyone who could pay. Pirates, smugglers, traders, mercenaries. They all came here to drink and talk and share information. Tonight, the talk was about humans. A grizzled captain named Dor sat at a corner table, surrounded by younger members of his crew. He was a Kalari, a species with 4 arms and scales like dark metal. He had been raiding ships for 40 years, and he had seen many things. But the story he was telling made even his hardened crew listen with wide eyes. "The Valorans thought they had an easy target," Dor said. "A cargo ship with a crew of 4. No weapons worth mentioning. No escort. Just a bunch of soft humans hauling medicine to some colony." He took a drink from his cup and continued. "They boarded the ship. Standard procedure. Lined up the crew. Threatened to kill them. And then the human captain did something. Nobody knows exactly what. Some say she pressed a button. Some say she just spoke a command. But suddenly, the gravity changed. One of the younger crew members leaned forward. Changed how? It tripled, Dor said. Maybe more. Every single Valoran soldier dropped to the floor. Their exoskeletons cracked. They could not breathe. They were dying slowly just from the weight of being on that ship. And the humans? Dor laughed, a rough sound like metal scraping stone. The humans were fine. They just stood there, walking around like nothing had happened. They picked up the Valorans' weapons, tended to their wounds, and then carried them back to their ship. Every single one of them survived. The crew was silent for a moment. Then another one spoke. So the humans are not weak after all. No, Dor said firmly. They are not weak. They are something much more dangerous. They are strong and they are kind. And that combination is terrifying. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. Never board a human ship. That is my advice. Never give them a reason to show you what they really are. Because when they do, you will not survive it. And even if you do, they will probably save your life afterward, which is somehow worse. The crew laughed nervously, but Dor did not smile. I am serious, he said. There are many dangerous species in this galaxy, but humans might be the most dangerous of all. Not because they want to hurt you, but because they do not need to. They can crush you with their own world, and then help you stand up again. How do you fight something like that? He had no answer. Neither did anyone else. On the Starlight Drifter, life had returned to normal. The crew made their deliveries, picked up new cargo, and continued their journey through the stars. But something had changed. Lavra could feel it. Other ships gave them more room now. Station officials treated them with more respect. And occasionally, when they stopped at a port, someone would approach them and ask if they were the crew from the story. The humans who had defeated a Valoran boarding party with nothing but gravity. Lara always gave the same answer. We just did what anyone would do. We protected ourselves, and then we helped them. Most people did not understand, but some did. One evening, Lavra found a message waiting for her in the ship's communication system. It was from an unknown sender, routed through several relay stations to hide its origin. But when she read it, she knew immediately who it was from. Captain Bennett, the message began. I do not know if you will receive this, or if you will care what I have to say, but I wanted you to know something. I have recovered from my injuries. I have been discharged from the military, and I have spent the last 3 months thinking about what happened on your ship. Lavra sat down and continued reading. I do not understand humans. I have tried, and I cannot. Your strength makes no sense to me. Your mercy makes even less sense. In my culture, the strong dominate the weak. That is the natural order. But you showed me something different. You showed me that the strong can choose to protect the weak. That power can be used for kindness instead of cruelty. The message continued for several more paragraphs, describing Krex's thoughts and questions and struggles. But the ending was what stayed with Lavra longest. I do not wish to fight humans anymore. Perhaps I never will again. Perhaps that is cowardice, or perhaps it is wisdom. I do not know. But I wanted to thank you, not for sparing my life, though I am grateful for that, but for teaching me that there is another way to be strong, a way that does not require cruelty or conquest. I do not know if I can follow that path, but at least now I know it exists. The message ended without a signature. Lara read it twice, then deleted it. She did not need to keep it. The words were already burned into her memory. Maya walked onto the bridge and noticed her captain staring at the empty screen. Everything okay? Lavra turned and smiled. Yes, just thinking. About what? Lavra looked out at the stars, stretching endlessly before them. Somewhere out there, a former enemy was starting a new life. Somewhere, a story was being told that might change how the galaxy saw humanity. And somewhere, a young medic had shown a wounded soldier that kindness was not weakness. I was thinking about ripples, Lavra said. How one small action can spread out and change things you never expected. Maya nodded slowly. Do you think what we did mattered? Lavra considered the question. Then she smiled. Maybe not to the whole galaxy, but 12 soldiers went home alive that day. And one of them just sent me a message saying we changed how he